Hello. Today's book is one I'm very pleased to be able to talk about and bring to you, whatever YouTube viewers I have who might be interested in getting the book and reading it, because I think it's really, really exceptionally good. It's a memoir. It is called When the World Didn't End by Guinevere Turner. So, at the outset, we know that, let me start with how I got to this book. I regularly listen to a podcast called Indoctrination, which is hosted, produced, whatever, by Rachel Bernstein, who is a helps people get out of cults, is interested in cults, writes about cults. We've seen her in some documentaries about cults. I don't think she was in The Vow, but she was in Seduced, one of the other documentaries about NXIVM and Keith Raniere and his victims. Actually, this was about the story of one of his victims, and that is kind of like this book in that it has elements of cult stuff in it. Let me talk about why I think the book is so great. The book is so great because of the focus of the writer. Guinevere Turner is not a particularly young person. She's a middle-aged woman. She is a successful screenwriter. And actually, I watched one of her movies last night, Charlie Says, after reading the book. I went to the movie because I was interested in seeing the movie after reading the book, but more on that later. So Guinevere Turner is 55 years old and has mastery of her craft, and that shows in this book, without a doubt, because she takes a choice of the structure of the book, the way to tell the story. The story is told from her point of view as a child, and it stays there. Now, that could be frustrating at some points, and of course the reader is going to want to know more, but it's not revealed because it is the child's story, and that gives it such power, such you are there at the moment with her, that the feel of that, the texture of the reality of a child entrapped in a situation that evolves into another trapped situation. It's really kind of out of the frying pan into the fire in this book. So, what goes on? She's involved in a cult, a kind of mysterious cult, and she leaves it kind of mysterious. It's started and run by this man, this musician named Mel Lyman. And Mel Lyman was wrote a couple of books, The Mirror at the End of the World, and I don't remember the name of the other one, Autobiography of a World Savior, and Mirror at the End of the World are the two books that Mel Lyman wrote. So it starts out with her as a young child, and the apocalypse does not happen. He is apparently stated that on this certain date, as the story goes, we are all going, us, the family, our group is going to be transported onto Venus. So get ready, get all in place, stay awake. This is going to happen. We're going to Venus while the rest of the world burns in an apocalypse that well, that they deserve, really, is what it comes down to. But that doesn't happen when the world doesn't end. So that's the starting off point, and we go on from there. What we get of the cult is only through her eyes. She tells us a little bit about her life, the day-to-day life. They, in the evenings, they listen to the music of Mel Lyman, who used to be in Jim Kweskin's jug band, and apparently Jim Kweskin is also a member of the group. I don't know if he's the Jimmy who is referred to in this book. He's still living. That might not have been a good idea for her to say Jim Kweskin, if that is the Jimmy in the text, which I have quite a bit of, I really feel as though it is. Now, see, now I'm getting into too much of the other information I have. I'm going to make probably a secondary video that's going to be in a sort of an appendix to this one, in which I'll talk more about what I'm learning about the Lyman family, the name of the cult, the Fort Hill community, another name of them, the family. I don't want to go into that, and I wanted to record this before I found out more about them, because the point of this book and the point of what I want to say about the book and why it's so good is that it does not focus on the cult and the leader of the cult. It focuses on this girl, this victim of this situation, because she's the one that matters. As in her movie, Charlie says, it's not about Charlie. He is not the one that matters. It's mainly about Leslie Van Houten, who has just been released from prison. Great, after all these years of, being kind of basically forced into what happened with the Tate LaBianca murders. She went to the second house, and according to the movie, did what Tex Watson had her do is participate, so implicated her in the whole thing. And the movie is about the girls in jail learning about feminism, learning about how they were controlled by this madman with this weird apocalyptic mindset and idea and notion that actually came from his ideas of biblical references and the Beatles. So what we know from Lyman in this story is that he's kind of like that too, in that. Let me put a little contextual thing in here. Okay, I'm of the age group. She was born in '68, so more or less I'm just like a couple of years younger than her mother, most likely. So I know the situation of which her mother's life was in the broader cultural sense, in that I was in Ohio. I don't remember where she was. I think somewhere in the east or some more populated area somewhere. So in a lot of the readings that I've come across, I see that a lot of these things, Manson, other cultish behavior, even like Ram Dass, Richard Alpert into Ram Dass, these things are, I think, a strange backwardness that came out of the openings of the 60s. The illumination that came out of LSD and how people tried to quantify that and tell us what it was. Now, I think it's a real mistake to take something like LSD and try to figure out what it is in this way that references to other things in our culture, because they seem to all go to old-time religion. With Ram Dass, it's sort of this Hindu thing, and putting on the robes, all this India stuff. With Mel Lyman and Manson, it's into the biblical stuff, which is, and kind of worse in a way. Now the situation she talks about with the group, her family, is kind of strange. It's not, it's very undefinable. It's sort of a religious, it's really a personality cult. It's sort of a religious thing, but in a way not really either, because they don't have, like, they drink and get drunk. They all smoke cigarettes. These things that they have. They do like natural things. It's sort of like, there are parts of it that have kind of a Waldorf Steiner education thing to it, where the women are doing handcraft things, stuff like that. But part of the overriding thing in all these is, maybe less so with the Ram Dass stuff, I don't really know, but in all these things, it really is a throwback to male dominance. So all of them seem to have a kind of reactive thing to the sexual revolution and then women's liberation. So there are, like, the cult of Hugh Hefner, which I kind of talked about in the last video. They take the parts of the sexual revolution that they like being able to have more women and impregnate more women, and but it's really kind of this double standard thing. It's free love kind of for the men, whereas the women are really constrained. And this is also in, Charlie says, this is also in some of the other sort of cultish behaviors. And so there's this reactive thing of to the steps forward in women's liberation, and it's a step backward, and we see that all through. I mean, not that I want to get into it, but a lot of stuff that's going on right now seems to be a really weird kind of medical science twist to the step backwards from women's liberation, whereas we don't even know what a woman is anymore, or it's suggested that a woman is more of a fluid thing other than a physical thing that has been oppressed for as long as our kind of written history is available to us in Western culture. So, what goes on in the book? She is. There is a woman here that is powerful and ahead of the situation, and that woman is Jessie Benton, who is the daughter of Thomas Hart Benton, who is a famous 20th century painter, and kind of made really beautiful things. Some murals from the WPA era, I believe. Really wonderful, kind of people's art. and this kind of a throwback into folklorish world. Oh, anyway, yeah, Benton. So Benton apparently was very successful and had some dough, so had some properties. So these people are kind of supported. Mel Lyman and his thing has this backdrop of this wealthy woman who owns property on Martha's Vineyard, which is, you know, not the cheap rent district. I don't know what it was in 1970 whatever that the timeline of this book, but certainly is now not a cheap situation as far as I know. I've never been there, but so they have a place there. They have a couple of city places, one in New York and one in Boston, where they kind of started out of the folk movement. Now I'm starting to talk about what I know from additional reading, and I don't want to. So Jessie Benton is very central to the story, and Guinevere is often trying to please Jessie Benton because she is a woman of power. She can decide where you're going to live, whether on the farm in Kansas or the compound in LA or in Martha's Vineyard. And, you know, it's better to be in Martha's Vineyard. It's better to be in the circle of Jessie Benton. It's better to be moving with her, because she seasonally, when winter would come, she would move everything and stop, you know, on wheels, on a bus and some cars. They would drive from Martha's Vineyard to Kansas, wherever the farm was, hang out there for a while, and then continue on to LA and spend the winters there. So now, once again, here is the person going aside now again to what the cult was like. This cult is supported by a wealthy woman, and Nixium was also supported by a wealthy woman, Claire Brofman, the Brofman sisters, liquor. Fortune of, you know, endless money from this liquor business. Manson blew that. He didn't get any wealthy women, and when he was sucking up the wealth, he failed, as in the story of Paul Snider, this other male-dominant character who figures in the Dorothy Stratten Playboy story. He was one to be rich, he was one to be famous and all these things, and he did attach to a woman who was going to be successful and going to be wealthy, or at least had a great potential of that, and it was shut down and not allowed because of the way he was, and it was clear that it was the way he was, his personality, his kind of low life status that dumped him out of the scene, which eventually caused him to enrage and murder, which is the same thing that goes on with Charlie. Charlie says, now he doesn't really find a woman who, he only finds women he can turn into sex slaves and murderers. He doesn't find a woman to support his thing, that, you know, and maybe that keeps everything in line for a certain amount of time, if there is a woman like that. I kind of have a feel that women are not so ruthless and hateful and out for the destruction of mankind. So, Jessie Benton, the wealthy woman, Charlie, and Charlie says he is thwarted from his record contract by Terry Melcher, who's like, no, I pass. And then he goes out trying to kill Terry Melcher as a revenge. And just like Paul Snider ends up killing Dorothy Stratten as a revenge. Maybe he should have killed Hefner instead, I don't know, or Bogdanovich for that matter. But even though Bogdanovich is somebody, not as bad. Make that value judgment. So, by the age of 11, her mother, Guinevere Turner's mother, is never living with her. She's in New York in another little situation of the Lyman family where they have a couple of townhouses or something, and she's working every day on Wall Street. So she goes and visits her mother. Her mother takes up with a man referred to as FP through the story. And FP is not loved by the rest of the community. When he comes around, he's kind of a jerk, as Paul Snider was a jerk, as Charles Manson was a jerk. And ultimately, she is cast out. The mother leaves with FP, leaves the family and goes to live with Grandma, her mother, in New Jersey. And at that point, Guinevere is removed from the family and into Grandma's house with her mother and this horrible FP. So there's two halves to the story here, and that's why I say it's out of the frying pan into the fire, because the cult was one thing, but it had a certain structure and safety and logic of its own. There were punishments, so on and so forth, and it was kind of miserable and stupid and closed off and a lot of things, but it wasn't as horrifying ultimately, at least in this story, as what went on when she ends up in this mock nuclear family situation with FP and her mother, who apparently was completely untouched by feminism or entrapped economically. There is a couple of situations where she states about the entrapment, the mother does, how entrapped economically she is, and so they stay together. And this is not good for either of the children. She has another half sister who is younger, and she is also living with them in the mother's house in New Jersey. So the craft that went into this story is supreme, the best. This is a very suspenseful, well-told story. We are with the girl and the young teen right there, from her earliest view of things in the early 70s when she's like 5, into when she becomes 18. Now, of course, we know that she's a successful screenwriter, so she has somehow come out of all this. So we know throughout the book that she's going to come out of it somehow, but you know, it's not clear from what we're reading. She does not go forward and say, oh, in this back then I was thought about this and then, but I think about this in this way now. There's none of that kind of reflection from the moment into the past. It's all straight ahead out of diaries she wrote back then, out of all these types of things that bring us right there into the moment. And that is the ultimate power of this truly great memoir. Now, I'm not all that for, this is coming out in this year. It's a library book. It came out in May of 2023. No, I'm not so into the award thing, but if there is an award to be given for a memoir, I don't know, you know, what that would be. If there are such awards, a Pulitzer, whatever, this is it. This is just mind-blowingly great. I really suggest you read the book if you can, and you know, you can listen to the podcast with Rachel Bernstein. There's probably going to be other media that she does or has done that I haven't listened to yet, but you know, that's not the thing. The thing is the book. The thing is the power of her writing and the mastery of her skill as a writer and taking you back into these moments. It's not, you know, whatever around the story, like I've told you. I've told you pieces of this and pieces of that. You have not heard the story. You didn't get what is in the book from me chattering about it. Don't reject the book because of my chattering, and don't, you know, believe that you've learned anything about the book because of my chattering, because you have not. The book is the thing, and the book is truly great. As is Charlie Says, which is also in that perspective of the view of the woman in this situation of extreme male dominance. There's such this texture of male dominance that comes all through our society, and it's so. I'm quite interested in this cult stuff, and so much of it is about this male dominant thing going on. I know there are different things that there are not offshots of male dominance, you know, namely someone like, say, Teal Swan or the 3HO people, and you know, the woman who took over that and became dominant with all that. But anyway, the main thrust of our society and the main problem with these cults is male dominance, and it goes from the top to the bottom of how we live. You know, other than this beautiful nature here, it goes from you know, the family cult, the couple cult, the family with the male dominance, the couple with the male dominance, the culture with the male dominance, the political culture with the male dominance, the male dominance that is inherent in the military-industrial complex that is the center of and the big thrust and power of the cult of the USA that is causing a great deal of problems and is going to bring us all down with it eventually as well. Unfortunately, I have to really throw that in. I have to throw in my disgust for the military complex within every one of these little talks I do. I probably won't stop doing it. So for myself, I was given a gift of, you know, being confronted in, actually, I remember in May of 1960 by, you know, that second wave feminism within leftist groups when I was in New Haven as this crazy hippie kid, outside agitator, while everything was shut down after the U.S. started attacking, bombing Cambodia, and all the colleges were in revolt, and the whole thing was shut down, which ultimately led to the killings at Jackson State and Kent State and Chicago 8 and all these things that went on in that period. But I remember being at meetings where you know, feminists were a strong voice, and at that point, a strong voice that was able to be heard by some of us. I don't know how I was able to come to those ideas. I'm glad I did, and you know, I'm ashamed of my country for these things that I'm just stating, the dominance, the male-oriented dominance, the warriorness. And I'm ashamed of male culture. And I'm ashamed of whenever I've been brought into it in any sort of way. And, you know, I think I've been a good guy, but, you know, well, now that it's over, it's safe for me to say I'm done with it. And, you know, I don't have to go into relationships where there's any sort of situation with power struggle anymore, because I'm kind of done, as I'm done with this video. Thanks for watching. When the World Didn't End by Guinevere Turner.